5 years ago, I sat down with my garden journal one evening and I realized something that actually made me a little depressed when I thought about it. I was looking at the detailed logs for my tomatoes, my corn, and my beans, and I started calculating the hours I spent starting seeds indoors, tilling the soil, hardening off seedlings, transplanting them carefully, weeding constantly, watering during dry spells, and finally cleaning up all the dead plants in October. Then I looked at the harvest numbers at the end of the season. Don't get me wrong, it was genuinely a good harvest and I was proud of the results. But then I realized something that changed everything. I have to do exactly the same amount of work next year to get the same result in the year after that, and every year forever. It felt like being stuck on a hamster wheel that never stops. And in economics, they call this a linear return on investment. You put in 1 hour of work, you get out 1 pound of food. If you stop working, the food stops coming immediately. But as we get older, we don't want linear returns anymore. We want passive income that keeps flowing. We want compound interest that grows over time. So 5 years ago, I decided to run a long-term experiment that would either prove me right or make me look foolish. I took a significant section of my property and dedicated it entirely to perennial crops, plants that come back year after year without me lifting a finger after the initial planting. I wanted to test the concept of net calories and see if it actually worked in real-world conditions. And today, 5 years later, the results aren't just good, they are absolutely shocking in ways I didn't expect. Before I show you the specific plants and their results, we need to completely change how we measure gardening success. Most gardeners measure success by the pound and brag about their total harvest. I grew 50 pounds of potatoes this year. That's great and sounds impressive. But here's the question nobody asks. What was the actual cost of those potatoes? Not in dollars spent, but in energy expended. Net calories is a beautifully simple equation. It's the calories you harvest minus the calories you burned to grow them. If you burn 2,000 calories digging, weeding, and watering a patch of corn, and that corn only gives you 2,500 calories of food when you harvest it, your actual profit is very slim. You're barely breaking even energetically. This is the fundamental trap of modern agriculture that nobody talks about. It relies on heavy inputs, oil for machinery, synthetic fertilizer, and massive amounts of human sweat and labor. But nature doesn't work that way at all. A natural forest grows massive amounts of biomass, wood, leaves, nuts, berries, with absolutely zero human labor, zero input, but massive output year after year. That's what we call high net calories. My goal 5 years ago was to mimic that natural forest ecosystem as much as possible. I wanted the highest possible food yield for the lowest possible amount of back pain and work hours. The first thing I planted was what many consider the king of the perennial vegetable garden, asparagus. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. It takes too long to get started, and you're absolutely right, which is exactly why most people don't plant it. You plant the crowns in the ground, and for the first 2 years, you can't harvest a single spear. You just have to watch it grow and fern out while getting nothing in return. It requires genuine patience. But here's what happened when year 5 finally rolled around. This spring, I walked out to that established asparagus bed on a beautiful morning. I didn't till anything. I didn't plant seeds. I didn't even water it because the roots are now 6 feet deep and reach water on their own. I just walked out with a sharp knife and a basket to collect my harvest. Every single day for 6 solid weeks, I harvested fresh, nutrient-dense spears that tasted better than anything you can buy in a store. In terms of labor investment, my labor cost was essentially zero. The entire harvest was pure profit. If you compare that to the amount of work I put into my lettuce, which requires constant reseeding, thinning, and watering throughout the season, the difference is almost laughable. An asparagus bed can last for 20 or 30 years once it's established. It's an inheritance you leave to your future self and possibly even your children. The net calorie return on asparagus after year 4 is almost infinite because the input drops to near zero while the output stays high. Right next to the asparagus bed, I put in several crowns of rhubarb, which is another plant that scares people off because they only know it as a pie plant. from their grandmother's recipes. But structurally, rhubarb is an absolute workhorse in the garden. It's one of the very first things to come up in early spring, breaking what gardeners call the hungry gap, when fresh food is scarce. It effectively mulches itself with those giant leaves that spread out, shading out weeds so I don't have to spend time pulling them by hand. 5 years ago, I planted just 3 crowns in that bed. Today, those 3 crowns produce more volume than I can possibly give away to friends and neighbors. I harvest armfuls of thick stalks, chop them up, and freeze them for later use. And again, I do absolutely nothing to maintain them throughout the year. Maybe I'll throw a shovel full of compost around them in the fall, but that's it. Then we move to what I consider the real calorie density champions. Berry bushes, like blueberries, currants, and raspberries. Think about the energy density of a raspberry compared to a cucumber for a moment. The cucumber is mostly water with very few calories. The berry is packed with natural sugars and antioxidants in a small package. I planted high bush blueberries 5 years ago, and the first few years, the yield was honestly quite small, maybe just a handful per bush. But this year, each mature bush gave me nearly 10 pounds of delicious fruit. Let's run the math on that to see the real difference. To get 10 pounds of strawberries from annual plants, I have to replant runners every year, manage slugs constantly, and keep the soil perfectly moist. To get 10 pounds of blueberries from a mature bush, I literally just have to show up with a bucket and pick them. The bush has become permanent food-producing infrastructure in my garden. But the real secret to net calories, if you're serious about survival and long-term food security, is fat and protein. Vegetables are great for nutrition, but you can't survive on salad alone. You need genuinely dense calories. That's exactly why I planted hazelnuts, and this decision has paid off beyond my expectations. Most people think nut trees take 20 years or more to produce anything worthwhile. That's true for walnuts or pecans in many cases. But hybrid hazelnuts start producing in just 4 to 5 years, which makes them perfect for this experiment. This year was my first significant harvest, and I was amazed at what I collected. A hazelnut is 60% fat by composition, making it incredibly energy-dense. A single bucket of hazelnuts has more total calories than a truckload of lettuce. That's not an exaggeration. Growing calories on a tree is the ultimate cheat code for food production. The tree's root system is absolutely massive compared to an annual plant like corn. It accesses water deep in the water table during droughts, and it pulls minerals from the subsoil that shallow-rooted plants can't reach. It's essentially a solar panel that converts sunlight into fat and protein, and it gets more efficient every single year. My corn patch, it gets less efficient every year unless I pump in expensive fertilizer to replace what's been depleted. My hazelnut trees, they're just getting started and will keep producing for decades. There's another hidden yield that I didn't account for 5 years ago when I started this experiment: the soil itself. In my annual garden section, where I used to rototill every spring to prepare beds, the soil structure was pulverized and broken down. It dried out fast in the summer heat and needed constant amendments to stay productive. But in this perennial section, where I haven't touched the soil has completely changed and transformed. Because I haven't disturbed it in 5 years, the fungal networks, the mycelium that connects plants underground, are intact and thriving. The soil is spongy, dark black, and holds water like a natural reservoir. This means that even in a drought year, when water is scarce, my perennials thrive, while my neighbors' annual gardens are withering away and struggling. The net calories calculation includes the water I didn't have to pump from my well and the fertilizer I didn't have to buy from the store. When you grow perennials properly, you aren't just growing food. You're building a self-sustaining ecosystem that improves every year. You stop being a micromanager of individual plants and start being the steward of an entire system that takes care of itself. So looking back at this 5-year experiment, was it worth all the initial effort and patience? If you had asked me in year 2, when I was weeding around baby asparagus plants that I couldn't eat yet and wondering if I'd made a mistake, I might have grumbled and second-guessed myself. But standing here in year 5, looking at the incredible yields that come with almost zero work or maintenance, I can tell you with complete confidence it's the smartest thing I've ever done in my gardening life. We often think of gardening as a spring activity where we rush to the nursery to buy annuals and start the cycle over again. But I want to challenge you to think differently this year. This year, spend half your budget and half your energy on plants that will still be here 5 years from now producing food. Plant an asparagus bed even though you won't harvest from it for 2 years. Put in a row of raspberries along your fence line. Plant a hazelnut bush in that corner you don't know what to do with. Stop renting your food from annuals that die every year and start building equity with perennials that keep giving. Because as we get older, we don't want to work harder in the garden. We want the garden to work for us and make our lives easier. If you've got a perennial plant that has surprised you with its production over the years, tell me about it in the comments below. I'm always looking to add proven plants to the collection. Thanks for watching, and happy planting.